The Industrial Revolution took place between the 18th and 19th century, and the revolution was the transition to new manufacturing processes. It started in Great Britain and contributed to change Europe and America by making societies more urban and industrial. Before the revolution, people had to use simple machines and their hands for manufacturing, which often took place in people's homes. This later changed to the use of powered special purpose machinery, factories, and mass production. The iron and textile industries, along with the development of the steam engine, played central roles in the Industrial Revolution, which also saw improved systems of transportation, communication, and banking. This improved the standards of living for many people. Before the advent of the Industrial Revolution, most people lived in small communities where their daily existence revolved around farming and agriculture. Life for the average person was difficult as incomes were insufficient and starvation and disease were common. People produced their own food, clothing, furniture, and tools.
There are numerous reasons why Britain became the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. First, it had great deposits of coal and iron ore, which proved essential for the industrialization. Furthermore, Britain was a politically stable society, as well as the world's leading colonial power, which meant its colonies could serve as a source of raw materials, as well as a marketplace for the manufactured goods. Britain was a country with a lot of good resources and power. The Industrial Revolution spread from Britain to countries including Belgium, France, and Germany, and all the way to the US. By mid-19th century, industrialization was well established throughout the western part of Europe and America's northeastern region. By the earliest 20th century, the US had become the world's leading industrial nation. The Industrial Revolution came up with many new machines that doomed out the putting out system, in which raw cotton was distributed to peasants' families who spun it into thread and then wove the thread into cloth. These machines were too huge and expensive to be operated at home. Factories had one big large water wheel, which would comfortably replace all the equipment required, and the demise of the domestic home and rise of the factories began. The textile industry was the first to adopt the factory, as a place of work and production of cotton and wool would be increased significantly. Many of the factories were located close to rivers because they needed to be close to water. They needed the water for steam and water power. In England, they built shallow canals so the mills had water and ways to get the wool to the market with shallow draft boats. Factories were built by rivers until things could be powered by electricity. The Industrial Revolution was a profitable time for those running the factories. However, factory workers had to put up with incredibly difficult working conditions and low wages. With a long line of people in need for a job, employers could set wages as low as they wanted because people were willing to do whatever work they could if they got paid. It was common for people to work 14 to 16 hours a day for 6 days a week. However, the majority were unskilled workers who only received about $8 to $10 a week and about 10 cents an hour. Women received 1/3 or sometimes 1/2 of what men earned, and children received even less. Long hours, irregular breaks, cruel discipline, and labor-intensive work made the factory lifestyle dangerous. Many of the factory workers got health issues from working with cotton. Cotton thread had to be spun in damp and warm conditions. Going straight out in the cold night air led to many cases of pneumonia. The air was usually full of dust, which led to chest and lung diseases, and loud noise from machines damaged workers' hearing.
Hey, my name is Clark, and I'm going to show you a video from the 1920s of a 90-year-old woman who was named Charlotte. She lived during the Industrial Revolution, and she also worked in a factory when she was about 10 years old. Her personal story is something that we all can learn about, and we can also see how it really was during the Industrial Revolution. Here is her story.
Hello, I'm Charlotte. I was born in 1820, and I was 10 years old when I started working in the factory. My family was very poor growing up, and every chance we had to get work. My 4 older brothers worked in the factories, and one day they brought me with them, and I got a job working with the sewing machines. And I was working one day, and I got my hand cut in the machine. It was all bloody. And I tried to keep working, but the guy kept yelling at me, and I just couldn't, so I got fired and I couldn't get work anywhere else because I worked too slow because my hand was messed up.
I'm so hungry. Ah! Oh, my hand.
Get back to work. You got that cloth all dirty. Go cover that up and start working again. Faster. I can replace you if you don't hurry up. That's it. Get out of here.
Children were perhaps the biggest victims in the factories. Children often worked long hours in dangerous factory conditions for very little money. They were considered useful as laborers because their size allowed them to move into small spaces in factories where adults couldn't fit. And children were also easier to manage and control. And most importantly, they could be paid less than adults and they wouldn't complain about it. Child laborers often worked to help support their families, and a lot of them were therefore forced to sacrifice education. Forcing children to crawl into dangerous, unguarded machinery led to many accidents. In fact, up to 40% of accidents cases in Manchester in 1833 were caused by factory accidents. There were many benefits to have the factory system. Mainly, it helped with the production of goods because products were made easier and faster. A lot more people could work at a time with more machines in one place. This made the production more faster and simple. With all the large factories being built, the industrial economies of the nations greatly increased. It created many more jobs for especially people in lower class societies with lower incomes. More of the main or higher paying jobs in the factories started to become industrial engineers and business owners. For the lower paying jobs, you didn't need a lot of skill to work. That's why children were a majority of the factory workforce. The factory had a lot of negative effects as well. The factories added a lot of pollution, building up in the city's air and water supply. This started to have a negative impact on the lives and health of citizens, especially those living in the slums and more crowded areas. Cities also became very dirty, which led them to become more disease-prone. The factories were also big promoters of child labor. Children and other low workers were often beaten and treated pitifully when working. They were also given minimum wage, and the children lived in brutal conditions. The Revolution was a very prosperous time in history. New inventions, ideas, and ways of production made life more efficient and helped with the rapid growth in population. It changed the way things were made. Most home and handmade necessities were now being made by machines in the factories, where there were many of them. It improved people's lives in many ways, but it also negatively impacted them. With dirtier cities, people's health was majorly downgraded, and many children didn't go to school so they could work to provide for their poor families. The Industrial Revolution spread from Great Britain to the world, overall advancing society in a positive way.